The boot sat by the fireplace, cracked at the heel, its leather dulled with age and dust. The left one was spotless, polished, with a new pair of laces someone had threaded in the 1980s. The right one, though, that one told a story. And not just in creases or wear. No, there was something else. Tucked deep between the sole and the welt, long hardened into the stitching, a faint, rust-colored stain. Blood. Old, dried, never scrubbed away. Ed, Brody never spoke about it. Not to his wife, not to his children, not to the neighbors who'd seen him limp slightly on cold mornings. The boots were always there, lined up under the coat rack, as much a part of the house as the ticking wall clock or the faded war photo in the hallway. And yet no one, not for decades, ever asked why he only cleaned one of them. He was 92 when I met him, though age had long since bent him forward and blurred his voice to a whisper. His hands were still large, still stained at the nails with oil from the lawnmower he refused to replace. He greeted me with a firm nod and asked if I believed in ghosts. I said I wasn't sure. He looked down, then slowly tapped his finger against the edge of that right boot. "That one," he said, his voice raspy but precise, "is mine. The blood isn't." He didn't explain, and in that moment, I understood this wasn't just a story about war. It was about what a man chooses to carry, and what he never lets go of. Edward Brody had been a medic. Not by training, he'd worked in a glass factory before the draft, but by necessity. The Army issued him a canvas satchel, a Red Cross armband, and the quiet, unbearable expectation that he would run toward the wounded when everyone else was ducking for cover. He was 24 when he shipped out, a quiet Ohio boy with a pocket Bible, a pack of Lucky Strikes, and a photo of his fiancée tucked into his jacket. He didn't talk much, didn't write often, but he listened to men crying out for mothers, to the sickening sound of bones splintering under shell fire, to the silence that followed. The story he never told, the one tied to that boot, started late in the war, during a scattered retreat through a nameless stretch of forest outside Aachen. His unit had been hit hard the night before. Fog hung low over the trees like smoke. Ed had lost track of time, maybe even of direction. But what he remembered clearly was the boy. He couldn't have been more than 16, Ed said. Maybe younger. German uniform, pale, bleeding bad from the leg. He found him slumped behind a fallen tree, trying to stuff a rag into a shrapnel wound. The boy didn't speak English. He didn't need to. The fear was plain, sharp as broken glass. And something else, relief. Because Ed didn't raise his weapon, he opened his satchel, and for 10 long minutes, there was no war. Just one man trying to stop the bleeding, and one boy trying not to die. Then came the voices, footsteps, Allied patrol. The boy's eyes widened. He reached for Ed's arm, and Ed, torn between mercy and fear, did something he would question for the rest of his life. He couldn't have been more than 16, Ed said. Maybe younger. German uniform, pale, bleeding bad from the leg. He found him slumped behind a fallen tree, trying to stuff a rag into a shrapnel wound. The boy didn't speak English. He didn't need to. The fear was plain, sharp as broken glass. And something else, relief. Because Ed didn't raise his weapon, he opened his satchel. And for 10 long minutes, there was no war. Just one man trying to stop the bleeding, and one boy trying not to die. Then came the voices, footsteps, Allied patrol. The boy's eyes widened. He reached for Ed's arm, and Ed, torn between mercy and fear, did something he would question for the rest of his life. He told himself it was for the mission, for the patrol, for the good of the unit. But none of that held when the gunshot rang out behind him. Just one, a clean, surgical sound that echoed in the trees like a final breath. Ed didn't stop walking. He reached the rest of the unit an hour later. Said nothing. No one asked. That night, he removed his boot to rub the ache from his heel, and saw it. Blood. Not his. A smear where the boy had grabbed him, where his hand had clung for just a second too long. He didn't clean it. He couldn't. In the days that followed, he told himself it would flake off, that rain or mud would erase it. But it stayed, worked its way into the stitching, into the leather, into his life. He wore those boots until the war ended. Then he kept them, because that mark, small, silent, buried in shadow, was the only proof that the boy had ever existed, and that Ed, for one moment, had tried to save him. After the war, Ed returned to Chillicothe and married the woman who had waited for him, Grace, with her soft hands and storm-colored eyes. He opened a repair shop on Main Street, fixed radios, sharpened saw blades, changed the oil in every pickup in town. People liked him, trusted him, said he was reliable, solid, a man who didn't say much but got the job done. They didn't know about the nightmares. They didn't know why he winced at fireworks, why he never sat with his back to the door, or why he refused to let anyone throw out his old boots. Grace asked him once, early in their marriage, why he only polished the left one. He said, habit. She never asked again. Their home was quiet, not cold, just careful. Ed was kind but distant, loving in a way that came through in acts, not words. Fixing her garden fence before she asked, handing her a coat before she realized she was cold. He raised two sons who knew their father as a man of few stories and many tools. When his oldest asked about the war for a school project, Ed gave him a short list of facts, dates, locations, a medal or two, and that was that. The boots stayed by the back door, year after year, move after move, and the blood? Still there, duller now, fused to the leather like a shadow that didn't fade. He never told Grace, never told his boys. Because to speak of it would mean dragging that boy, his face, his voice, that reaching hand, out of the silence Ed had built to protect both of them. And some things, Ed believed, were meant to stay buried, even if they never truly left. Ed suffered a stroke at 91. It stole his speech, blurred his vision, and left him drifting in a fog of half-formed sentences and fading time. He could no longer manage the stairs, could no longer thread the laces of his boots. His grandson, Jonah, moved into the spare room to help. A history teacher by trade, Jonah had always sensed something unspoken in his grandfather's past, but Ed had never offered it, and Jonah had never pushed. Until the day he opened the old footlocker in the garage. He was looking for a spare radio part, he thought. But what he found instead was a tin box inside the locker, sealed with a brittle leather strap. Inside, a folded strip of cloth with a red cross stitched in, a rusted army-issued penknife, and a thin, crumpled envelope. It wasn't addressed, but inside it was a single page, lined, yellowed, and written in pencil so faint it was nearly unreadable. The handwriting was careful, awkward, like it had taken the writer a long time to learn the letters. I don't think I live long, but thank you for trying. I saw it. You wanted to stay, but they were coming. It's okay. You helped. That was enough. My name is Emil. I am not afraid. It was signed with a child's drawing, a small cross, and a crooked tree. Jonah sat in the garage for over an hour, the page trembling in his hands. He understood then what no one else ever had, that Ed hadn't been running from cowardice. He'd been running from forgiveness, and that boy in the woods, Emil, had given it to him, scrawled in pencil, sealed in silence, and left like a blessing inside a blood-stained boot. When Ed Brody passed, the family held a small service under the old oak tree behind the Methodist church. The flag was folded, the rifle salute fired. People came, neighbors, customers, veterans who'd once sat silently beside him at the VFW hall. They shared stories of broken radios fixed in minutes, of snowblowers resurrected in January, of a man who always knew when someone needed help without asking. But Jonah brought something no one else did. He placed a single boot, worn, cracked, laced with care, beside the casket, not polished, not cleaned, and on its side, just barely visible in the morning sun, that shadowed stain still clung to the leather. Proof of a moment never spoken, a choice never forgotten, a boy never named, until now. Jonah read the letter aloud, voice shaking but clear. He spoke Emil's name into the Ohio air, releasing it at last from the forest floor of another continent, another life. Some cried. Some didn't understand. But Margaret, Ed's daughter-in-law, stepped forward and placed her hand on the boot. She whispered something no one could hear. And for the first time in almost 80 years, silence didn't feel like a secret. It felt like peace. Now, the boot rests in Jonah's classroom, not as a relic, but as a reminder that some of the most important stories in history were never written in textbooks. They were carried in silence, in pockets and boots. In the quiet ache of men who did their best with what the world gave them, the stain remains, not as guilt, not as shame, but as memory. Because sometimes the truest proof of humanity isn't what we do loudly, but what we carry quietly, until someone else is finally ready to listen.